So Dallas has not looked good to start the season. With their loss to the Hornets, they're now 1-3 to start. And I know that they beat the Clippers by 50. They looked amazing in that game. But a lot of people are saying that that loss by the end of the season probably won't mean anything for the Clippers. And I think the same can be said for the Mavericks. By the end of the season, that 50-point win probably won't mean much because in the three losses that they've had this year, there have clearly been some issues with this team. I know that they're missing Porzingis and he's their second scoring option. And if you took the second scoring option off of a lot of teams, they would take a hit. But watching this Mavericks team, it's clear that there's more to their struggles than just missing out on Porzingis. The first big issue with this team is that they cannot hit their three-point shots. They kind of went the defensive route this offseason by trading Seth Curry for Josh Richardson. Richardson, he was a good defender last year in Philly, and he's been a good defender throughout his career. He's 6'5", he's pretty long, he gives great effort on that end. So it makes sense that Dallas would be interested in a guy like that because they have to surround Luka with good defenders. Luka's probably never going to be a great defender throughout his career just because he doesn't have the physical tools to be a great defender on that end, right? You can give all the effort you want on the defensive end, but part of being a good defender requires you to have physical tools like a great wingspan or being very quick on your feet, being athletic, stuff like that Luka doesn't have the benefit of having, right? So it makes sense that you want to surround him with good defenders so you can kind of hide him on that end. You have other good defenders surrounding him. It makes sense in theory, right? But on the offensive end, Josh Richardson is a respectable three-point shooter at best. He didn't have the best percentage from three last year in Philadelphia, and this year he's shooting 33% from three, and he's probably going to be in that 31 to 33% range for the season. It's just not the best fit on the offensive end because guys are just going to help off of Luka, and they're going to give a guy like Josh Richardson that kind of three-point shot over Luka collapsing the defense, getting in the paint, scoring there, or collapsing the defense and finding a shooter or something like that, right? Dorian Finney-Smith has also been struggling from three to start this season, and I was kind of surprised because I was looking at his stats from last season, and he was a good three-point shooter, actually. It felt like whenever I was watching Mavs games, this guy could not hit an open three. Luka would always be penetrating, kicking out to him for a wide open three, and he would just be bricking it. But based off the stats last year, he was a good three-point shooter, 37% on 4 attempts per game. But the reason I'm a bit concerned with him is because if you start to look at all of his other seasons in the league, he wasn't a great three-point shooter. He wasn't shooting a good percentage. And it just makes me wonder if last season was a bit of an outlier and if he's truly just not that great of a three-point shooter. It's kind of the same thing with Draymond Green, right? In the 2015-16 season, Draymond shot a good percentage from three, but other than that, he has not been a good three-point shooter, right? That was an outlier season for Draymond, and I'm wondering if, last season was an outlier for Dorian Finney-Smith as well, because he has not been good from three either. And then at center, they have Dwight Powell, who again is a good player, but he's not shooting the three. So as of right now, the only three-point weapon that you have beside Luka to space the floor for him is Tim Hardaway Jr. Another problem with this team is that they're relying on Luka way too much, in my opinion. They don't have other guys on the floor that can create shots for Luka, and that's an issue because I was watching this Hornets game tonight, and Luka was forced to take a lot of bad shots, and that's part of the reason why his three-point percentage hasn't been as high as it probably could be. Because if you've watched Luka before, you can see that this guy has the form to be a very good shooter. His form looks very good. He gets a lot of arc on the ball. He has his feet set. He looks like he's on balance. He has all the tools to be a good three-point shooter, but his percentage just hasn't been great. And that's because he's forced to take a lot of off-the-dribble threes, a lot of step-back threes. How many times have you watched a Mavs game and seen a guy drive, collapse the defense, kick out to Luka, and get him a wide open spot up three-point shot? You don't see that, right? So Luka definitely needs that because that will give him easier looks. It's easy for the defense when you know who you just have to watch out for the whole game, even if they're as skilled as Lukadoncic, right? It's just easier for the defense to prepare for that. And especially on top of that, when you consider the fact that the other guys around Luka haven't been shooting well, it just makes that makes the offense easy to guard for the defense. I think that what the Mavs can do as of right now is to make some changes to their starting lineup. The first change would be to start Jalen Brunson over Josh Richardson, because although Josh Richardson is a better defender, he's more versatile on that end, he can defend multiple positions, Jalen Brunson is still a good, tough defender, and it's not like the Mavericks are going to be so, way worse on that end of the floor because they make that change. But where Brunson is really going to help is on the offensive end, because he's a better shooter than Josh Richardson is, so he'll be able to space the floor better for Luka than Richardson would be able to, right? On top of that, Jalen Brunson is a true point guard, so he can do more with the ball in his hands than Richardson can. He can initiate the offense at times. He can handle the ball, play in the pick and roll, and take some pressure off of Luka. He can let Luka take some possessions off, for lack of a better word, on the offensive end, right? So life is just not going to be as difficult on Luka because he doesn't have to be the primary ball handler every single time down the floor. The offense isn't going to be so reliant on him to create. So that will be good. And then there's going to be times where Jalen Brunson can create open looks, can create shots for Luka. Just make life easier on him in general, right? So I would like to see them make that change. And I've kind of alluded to this change as well early in the video, but I think that Maxi Kleber should be starting over Dwight Powell, right? Just because Dwight Powell is good on the defensive end. I think he's better on the defensive end than Kleber is. He's a better rebounder than Kleber is. But offensively, Dwight Powell isn't spacing the floor for Luka because he's not a threat from the outside. Whereas Kleber is. He was a good three-point shooter last year. His presence in the starting lineup would make the offense a lot more effective because it would give Brunson and Doncic much more room to operate. It would give them much more space on the floor. And on the defensive end, he's still a good defender. Maybe he's not as good as Dwight Powell is, but Kleber's still a good defender. He can defend well in the pick and roll. He's a good post defender. So the defense wouldn't just take some huge hit with him in the starting lineup. So I would like to see that change made as well, right? And then once Porzingis comes back, you could have a starting lineup of Brunson, Doncic, Tim Hardaway, Porzingis, and Maxi Kleber. I just like that starting lineup more because you're still good on the defensive end, but it makes your offense a lot more dynamic, right? You have much more spacing with that starting lineup because everyone in that starting lineup can shoot. You don't have any guys that the defense can just help off of or anything like that, or you don't have any guys in that starting lineup that the defense isn't really afraid of from the outside. All those guys can shoot. And then by having Jalen Brunson next to Luka, you have a guy that can take some pressure off of him. Now, the important thing to remember with this Mavs team is that they're still very young. Doncic and Porzingis, their two best players, very young, and it's not like this is a championship or bust season. But when you have this type of talent, if you're Dallas, you can't just let seasons go to the wayside, right? And think, we have these guys locked up, they're young, we're going to be fine. No, every season you should be looking to see, okay, how can we improve this team? I'm okay with them going the defensive route, trying to surround Luka with really good defenders because I think that that's the best way for them to win a championship in the future. But I think that what this season is showing them, at least so far, and what I think it will show them throughout the whole year, is that you need to find defensive players who can also shoot the ball very well, right, to space the floor for Luka. And you also need defensive players who can also create for Luka and take pressure off of him. You can't just have Luka control the whole offense and expect him to be able to do everything, because that doesn't work in most cases. I mean, we've looked at James Harden all these years, and he hasn't been able to do everything himself, handling the ball and creating the whole offense, being the whole offense. So the Mavs just need to realize that they need to make some changes to this roster going forward. But I think they're going to be fine. They'll still be good enough to make the playoffs this year. Once Porzingis comes back, they'll look a lot better. But yeah, going forward, they do need to make some changes to this team if they want to take that next step from just being a good playoff team to actually being a championship contender.